Chapter 451, 259. Shen Qinghan's Identity. Palace of Water God, _2. At the moment the striking sound echoed, Xiaolu, whose biological level reached the great perfection of high-level 9th order, exploded into pieces, turning into a shower of blood that spread across the ground, disappearing completely from this world. After killing Xiaolu, the vines swept toward Shen Qinghan, who lay on the ground as their next target. Just as the vine was about to strike the seemingly delicate and fragile body of Shen Qinghan. Boom! The ground beneath Shen Qinghan suddenly burst open like an inflated balloon, exploding violently. Then, a large amount of groundwater gushed out from below, enveloping Shen Qinghan in a watertight membrane of water on the surface. Bang! The vine, with the force of a mountain's weight behind it, struck the water membrane fiercely. However, instead of shattering the water membrane and the Shen Qinghan shielded within into a puddle of blood as expected, the vine itself instantly shattered into wood chips at the seemingly soft touch of the water membrane. Witnessing this scene with her own eyes, the vine flower woman's entire being widened her eyes in disbelief at what she had seen. My vine, with the strength of an epic existence, how could it not penetrate through a mere layer of water membrane? What exactly is going on? The vine flower woman felt utterly baffled by this and suspected she was hallucinating. She steadied her emotions slightly. The vine flower woman once again controlled a vine, violently whipping it towards Shen Qinghan within the water membrane. Bang! That familiar sound rang out again. The vine lashed heavily against the water membrane, instantly shattering into wood chips. This time, the vine flower woman finally surrendered to the reality before her. The water membrane shielding Shen Qinghan could easily withstand the full force of an epic-level creature's blow. What in the world was that water membrane? And what was the situation with the Earth Girl inside the water membrane? It was simply inconceivable. The vine flower woman curiously observed Shen Qinghan within the water membrane, realizing that the events unfolding were beyond her comprehension. This made her hesitate. She hesitated over whether to take Lin Zikan or the Shen Qinghan inside the water membrane with her. Lin Zikan was certainly special, that much was clear. But Shen Qinghan at this moment seemed even more special than Lin Zikan, placing her in a tough position, making her unsure of how to decide for a good while. As she was struggling to make a decision, the ground of the cage began to seep water at a visibly fast rate, quickly turning the previously slightly dry ground into a wetland covered with water. Having never seen such a bizarre scene, the vine flower woman immediately became cautious. No longer hesitating between taking Lin Zikan or Shen Qinghan, she closed the flower bud and opted to take the risk-free Lin Zikan, to offer him as a sacrifice to the great flower god. But just as the flower bud fully sealed, the vine flower woman's expression changed slightly, incredulously finding that her flower bud could not burrow beneath the ground to connect to the Holy Land far beyond the horizon. What's going on? Why can't I teleport away? With this confusion, the vine flower woman furrowed her brows and opened the flower bud to see what was happening outside that could prevent her flower bud from teleporting away. Soon, the flower bud opened. The moment the flower bud opened, a large influx of icy water poured in from outside, instantly bursting the flower bud despite its epic-level strength into several petals. Seeing her own flower bud burst by water, the vine flower woman was full of astonishment, suspecting she was under an illusion technique, seeing an illusion. Her flower bud was an epic second-order strength. How could plain water possibly burst it? The vine flower woman tried to calm her emotions and extended her spiritual power to sense the surrounding environment. She hadn't expected to feel startled from this sensing effort. The vine flower woman discovered in horror that she was not in the familiar cage but found herself in a completely unknown underwater world. Have I been teleported? When did it happen? When was I teleported here? Why don't I feel anything? The vine woman thought with growing horror. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became. Since evolving into an epic-level creature, she had seldom felt such panic, she was always the one causing panic in other living beings. At this moment, inexplicably being transported to a completely unfamiliar environment, she felt panic that she hadn't experienced in a long time and didn't know what to do. Is there a palace ahead? Under the constant perception of her spiritual power, the Vine Woman quickly sensed a majestic palace a few miles ahead. The palace was huge, so huge that it made the Vine Woman wonder in disbelief. She didn't understand why there would be a palace in this underwater world. Could I have accidentally entered a ruin? Suddenly, the Vine Woman thought of this possibility. Then, in less than a second, the panic and disbelief in her heart were all transformed into excitement and eagerness. She had only thought about coming to this battlefield to capture someone and bring them back. Unexpectedly, she encountered a delightful surprise and actually entered a ruin. In the origin land, entering a ruin meant that there was a great possibility of obtaining a vast amount of special evolution resources. And with a great deal of evolution resources, her biological level could advance even further. With this in mind, the Vine Woman did not hesitate for a second and immediately swam at the fastest speed toward the gigantic palace a few miles ahead. Her speed was so fast that she created large swirling undercurrents in the water. In less than half a second, the Vine Woman had traveled a few miles and arrived in front of the palace. Behind her, trailing a chrysalis connected by vines. And inside the chrysalis, Linziken was wrapped up, controlled by her. Creak. Suddenly, a deep wooden sound rose. The doors of the palace opened. The Vine Woman instantly became vigilant and swiftly pulled back a great distance, not daring to approach the opened doors of the palace rashly. As an epic-level expert, she had explored several ruins before and knew that, apart from opportunities, ruins were places fraught with immense danger. To rush in recklessly could mean death in minutes, becoming one with the evolution resources of the ruin. You've finally come. Just as the Vine Woman was considering how to enter the palace and find out what was inside, a faint woman's voice suddenly emerged from the palace, rippling the exterior of the palace. Hearing the words "You've finally come," the Vine Woman was filled with confusion. What did that mean? What does it mean by "you've come"? The whisper of a demon, luring me inside? The Vine Woman was very cautious and wasn't lured by the voice coming from inside the palace. God! Great God! Please bestow upon us strength! Inside the palace, a series of awestruck cries echoed. Listening to these cries, the Vine Woman's confusion deepened, and her curiosity and wariness about what was inside the palace grew. She had entered several ruins before but had never encountered one with continuous voices coming from within. God! God! You have finally responded to us! God has finally appeared! Suddenly, the voices inside the palace became excited. The Vine Woman was puzzled. Then she suddenly saw a frail figure drifting over from behind her. P.S. Bowl in hand, asking for monthly pass and recommendations. Chapter 452, 260. Water God? The Filth God? Chi King Mo in the ruins. A high altitude 1,000 miles from the city. Nearly 10 legendary level creatures were caught in an intense battle, each displaying their magical powers, making the heavens and earth change color. Suddenly, a blinding sunburst of light erupted, scorching the land within 100 miles to ash. In the ashes, a world tree wrapped in copious amounts of black chi stood tall and unyielding, unaffected by the scorching sunlight. It was the black chi that protected the world tree. The black chi absorbed the sunlight, saving the world tree from the torment of incineration. Boom! Suddenly, the earth violently shook. The ground cracked open with dozens of fissures, oozing strands of chillingly cold death chi. The next second, from within the cracks, massive numbers of grotesque shadows crawled out, forming a vast legion of the dead that rushed towards Qin Chuan and the other city defenders. Shang Guanyuehua, the deputy city lord, saw this and immediately manipulated the vast stretch of land to move, forcibly closing the cracks above. No sooner had the cracks closed than countless thick thorns burst from the earth, shooting towards the sky, peppering the sealed ground with holes and once again oozing strands of black chi, reforming into a legion of the dead. Humph, mere low-level undead. Qin Chuan snorted coldly, and then, his profound eyes emitted a golden radiance, making the sun above him blaze with even greater heat. In an instant, the golden shine illuminated the land, dispersed all the black chi, and incinerated the legion that had emerged from the cracks to nothingness, dissipating completely. The world tree, enveloped in black chi, rapidly began to carbonize under this terrifying golden radiance, its life force swiftly ebbing away. City Lord Qin is indeed powerful. Above the world tree, the thorn fairy, with her flirtatious eyes, said in a seductive voice, but no matter how powerful City Lord Qin is, can he really be stronger than the avatar of a mythical level creature? As soon as she finished speaking, the world tree beneath her, now completely charred, suddenly swelled with countless writhing blood vessels. Upon their appearance, the originally dead and charred world tree instantly came back to life with vigor. Under the gaze of Qin Chuan and the others, the world tree suddenly grew numerous blood-red thorns, which fiercely pierced the earth to suck in nutrients, causing the trunk to grow rapidly before their very eyes, transforming into a world tree that blotted out the sun. Sli, accompanied by a series of crisp cracking sounds. Numerous bloodshot eyes opened on the trunk of the world tree, their chilling gazes sizing up everyone present. Upon seeing Qin Chuan and the others, the world tree uttered an ancient and time-worn voice. Just a city stronghold, yet it managed to produce 4 legendary level beings in a mere 100 years. I must say, you Earthlings' evolutionary talent is indeed formidable. Listening to this familiar ancient and time-worn voice, Qin Chuan, as the city lord, furrowed his brows tightly, his expression turning extremely grave. It was Elder Tree, one of the only 2 mythical level creatures of the Sun-Moon Sacred Land. Such a powerful being had actually come to this battlefield in the form of an avatar. Was the Sun-Moon Sacred Land ready to break into all-out war with Earth? Qin Chuan was utterly perplexed. All this time, the mythical level experts of the major powers had always remained behind the scenes, never taking action themselves, like the nuclear weapons on Earth, serving only as a deterrent. But now, the Sun-Moon Sacred Land had deployed a mythical level creature, breaking the unspoken rules. This was unbelievable to Qin Chuan, and it filled him with a chilling sense of foreboding. If someone who always followed the rules suddenly flips the table and disregards them one day, it means that person is ready for everything to come crashing down. And the rule breaking by the Sun-Moon Sacred Land now filled Qin Chuan with fear that it would lead to an unprecedented great war with Earth, tearing asunder any facade of peace. Though Earth also had mythical level experts, they were extremely few in number, and most were not stationed on Earth. If a war of annihilation were to suddenly break out, Earth would face complete conquest. Buzz buzz buzz. A deafening tearing through the air suddenly exploded. Countless thorns tipped with venom, carrying vast amounts of origin force, furiously shot towards Qin Chuan and the others. They were so fast that Qin Chuan and the others had no time to react, their bodies were immediately penetrated by thorns, leaving behind horrifyingly large holes. City Lord, save me! Deputy City Lord Bai Wubian, with the thorn piercing through his heaven's gate, was rendered immobile as his life force rapidly drained away, forcibly crying out for help to Qin Chuan not far from him. However, at that moment, Qin Chuan was unable to save even himself, with 7 thorns piercing his body, rendering him just as immobile as Bai Wubian, only able to watch helplessly as the thorns devoured his life force. It's over. We're going to die. We're all going to die. Despair filled Qin Chuan's heart. He never expected to die on this battlefield. Mythical level creatures are too powerful, and even just an avatar was a terror that he, a legendary level being, couldn't contend with. Your Sun-Moon Sacred Land is breaking the rules. Our mythical level experts will surely repay you tenfold. Even if it means our own extinction, we'll pull your sun-moon sacred land down with us to accompany Earth in death." Knowing he had no chance of survival, Qin Chuan used the last of his strength to stare down the avatar of Elder Tree and make his threat. Hearing this, the Thorn Fairy perched on the avatar of Elder Tree simply laughed aloud. Chapter 453, 260. Water God? Filth God. Qi King Mo in the ruins, _2. City Lord Qin, the mythical level creatures of Earth are now trapped inside the ruins, struggling to save themselves, and it's highly likely they'll never come out again. If anyone is to be buried with them, it will be those mythical level creatures from Earth who will accompany all Earthlings in death. Upon hearing this, Qin Chuan's eyes widened suddenly, and his face turned ashen. After listening to the Thorn Fairy's words, he immediately realized something: the news about the ruins that had circulated earlier had been deliberately released by the Sun-Moon Sacred Land. The purpose was to lure all the mythical level experts from Earth into a trap and capture them all at once. And to think I had previously considered entering the ruins to obtain the evolution resources within. Now it seemed that the enemy had exploited my eagerness to evolve. Just as Qin Chuan and the others were plunged into despair. Boom! A massive explosion sounded from the hazardous area in front of City Gate Number 1. The noise traveled over a distance of thousands of miles and reached this battlefield, initially a realm of legendary level creatures. At this moment, all the living beings present were captivated by the sound of the explosion, and they each spread their spiritual power in the direction it came from to investigate. Then, very soon, they all saw a colossal palace suspended in the sky at the location of the sound. The palace was surrounded by water, and the plaque above its gate bore the clearly inscribed words "Palace of the Water God." Above the palace, the figure of a delicate young girl floated. Inside the palace, continuous shouts of excitement could be heard, welcoming the return of the god. The Palace of Water God? What is that? How come I've never heard of it before? Qin Chuan and other leaders within the city were filled with the same doubts after observing the situation of the palace. But the incarnation of the Elder Tree, whose actual strength reached the mythical level, widened its eyes in an extremely shocked expression. Has the Water God actually resurrected? As soon as the Elder Tree's incarnation uttered these words, the burnt black ground around it suddenly oozed with copious amounts of cool groundwater, turning the charred earth into wetlands in an instant. And it wasn't just here. The Elder Tree's incarnation spread its spiritual power to sense the land within tens of thousands of miles, and discovered that the surface of the land within this range was also seeping with water, completely transforming into water-rich wetlands. Moreover, the water level was quickly rising, with the potential to turn the entire expanse of land into an ocean. Realizing this, the Elder Tree's incarnation immediately shouted to the Thorn Fairy on its body and to an extremely powerful alien from the land of Oblivion. "Go, leave this place quickly." Hearing this shout, both the Thorn Fairy and the alien from the land of Oblivion looked puzzled. However, the incarnation of the Elder Tree didn't bother to explain further, and soon its soul escaped at high speed from this place of conflict. Having lived tens of thousands of years, it knew what the water god signified. She was one of the 5 elements gods. If touched by her water, one's soul would suffer terrifying contamination, making her an incredibly troublesome ancient deity. In a very distant primordial era, this fearsome water god possessed a title that made all living beings tremble with fear: the contaminated god. Seeing the decisive escape of the Elder Tree's soul, the Thorn Fairy and the alien from the land of Oblivion, despite their confusion, promptly followed suit and fled without hesitation, not daring to linger a moment longer. As these 3 powerful beings left, Qin Chuan and others thus snatched back their lives. "City Lord, what exactly is happening?" Shang Guanyuehua, pressing on a bloody hole in her chest, asked Qin Chuan with a pale face. Of all present, Qin Chuan had lived the longest and witnessed the most, making him the most knowledgeable. If anyone understood the current situation, it would undoubtedly be Qin Chuan. As Shang Guanyuehua voiced her confusion, others also turned their gazes to Qin Chuan, hoping to get answers from him. However, Qin Chuan disappointed them. Under their gazes, Qin Chuan shook his head and said, "I'm not sure what is happening either." He was aware of the two mythical level creatures in the Sun-Moon Sacred Land, the Elder Tree and the Flower God. He also knew of the mythical level creature in the Land of Oblivion, the Lord of Silence. He even knew about the mythical level creatures in the powers of the northern and eastern regions. But he had indeed never heard of the existence known as the Water God. Which power's mythical level expert was the Water God? And why did even the Elder Tree fear her? Perhaps, only a being at the level of a province lord would be privileged enough to know. Qin Chuan thought to himself. In the depths of an extremely ancient origin land ruin, Qi Qingmo, wearing a Taoist robe, arrived alone at the site of a tomb exuding an aura of wild antiquity and stopped. To call it a tomb was not entirely accurate. A burial mound would be more precise. As far as the eye could see, there were haphazardly placed tombstones everywhere. Each one was made from source crystals of exceptionally high purity, appearing incredibly lavish. Qi Qingmo spread her spiritual power, thoroughly sensing the situation beneath each tombstone. She then found that under every tombstone, there was a well-preserved body buried. But that was wrong. They weren't just bodies. These so-called bodies still had a trace of extremely faint vitality within them, preventing the divine sense from being eroded by time, and they hadn't truly died. Simply put, every corpse here has the potential to be resurrected. This isn't a mass grave, it's a forbidden land where powerful beings are sealed. Realizing this, Qi Qingmo instantly became cautious. She could feel that each of the corpses under the tombstones had been extremely powerful in life. If all these corpses were to resurrect at the same time, she wasn't confident she could handle them on her own. In such a case, she had to be cautious. The tomb of the Wood God. As her spiritual power continued to spread out, Qi Qingmo soon saw a distinctive tombstone in the deepest part of the mass grave. It was a tombstone made of unknown ore, and the words "Tomb of the Wood God" were carved on it. Just as Qi Qingmo was curious about what kind of existence the Wood God was. Behind her, a man's angry shout suddenly rang out, "Taoist robe woman, let's see where you can run to now." Looking in the direction of the voice, one could see three men and a woman rapidly approaching Qi Qingmo, and the biological pressure emanating from all four was extremely strong, with each starting at least at the great perfection of the 9th order legendary level. "Run!" Qi Qingmo turned to look at the four attackers and said expressionlessly, "I have never thought of running away." Over 40 li from City No. 1's borders, the palace of the Water God was suspended high in the sky, continually pouring down cold droplets to the ground below. Any living being touched by these droplets found themselves dazed, floating in the water, having lost their consciousness. A flower vine woman, with a biological level as high as epic, was within the watery membrane enveloping the palace of the Water God. Under the erosive touch of the droplets, her divine sense was completely worn away. The flower vine woman was under spiritual control, contaminated. The Elder Tree arrived. The terrifying World Tree. Qin Chuan and others were originally overwhelming the people from the Sun-Moon Sacred Land and the Land of Oblivion. But with the appearance of the Elder Tree, the tide of the battle changed in an instant. Suddenly, the palace of the Water God appeared, alarming everyone present. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. Elder Tree's face changed drastically. The Water God has revived. Before falling into a coma, he saw Luo Qingxiu take action. Everyone suspected Luo Qingxiu, the sole alien in the team, was the traitor. They verbally and textually attacked her. For safety's sake, they wanted to expel her from the team. But in fact, there was another person who was the traitor. Luo Qingxiu felt extremely aggrieved, having stayed in the team for so long and always giving her best effort, yet she had never been trusted and immediately burst into tears. Lin Zikan knew Luo Qingxiu wasn't the traitor, so he spoke up for her. Luo Qingxiu was being ostracized. Lin Zikan just casually said something. It was as if Luo Qingxiu remembered something. She remembered being ostracized in the past and knew she was Bai Shuet. The Earthlings could only abandon their stronghold in the origin land and return to defend Earth. Later, source crystals were exchanged for contribution points, shocking Lin Zikan. Qi Qingmo at the relics. Lin Zikan knew Luo Qingxu wasn't the traitor, so he spoke up for her. Luo Qingxu was being ostracized. Lin Zikan just casually said something. It was as if Luo Qingxu remembered something. She remembered being ostracized in the past and knew she was Bai Shuet. The Earthlings could only abandon their stronghold in the origin land and return to defend Earth. Later, source crystals were exchanged for contribution points, shocking Lin Zikan. Qi Qingmo at the relics. P.S. Holding out the bowl, begging for monthly pass and recommendation tickets. Chapter 454, 261. Mythical level expert. Kill with one hand. Above the palace, Shen Qinghan floated silently in the gently flowing water like a beauty from an ancient sarcophagus that had been asleep for tens of thousands of years, her long azure hair drifting softly with the current, exceedingly beautiful. Lin Zikan had no time to appreciate this beauty, he quickly swam to Shen Qinghan's side to check her condition. The moment he appeared above the palace, the excited shouting from within the palace eerily vanished in an instant. In its place, a series of piercing screams filled with terror suddenly erupted. "Don't sacrifice me! I don't want to die, I don't want to die! God, save me!" The terrified screams seemed abrupt. Hearing the screams, Lin Zikan couldn't help but jump, his face slightly changing as he quickly looked down towards the palace below. Upon looking down, he saw an unbelievable scene. The entire palace below was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The crumbling ruins instantly turned into streams of azure light that shot towards the sky, all pouring into Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. The streams of light moved with extreme speed, resembling panicked living beings fleeing from disaster, all rushing into the depths of Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. Watching the scene unfold before him, Lin Zikan felt somewhat at a loss for a moment. Instinctively, he wanted to stop what was happening, but he had no idea how to do so. Unsure whether the entry of these streams of light was good or bad for Shen Qinghan and if it would cause any adverse effects on her body, he could only keep staring at Shen Qinghan's face, hoping it wouldn't show signs of pain. However, in just a moment, the entire palace had collapsed. Turning into countless azure streams of light, all were absorbed into the depths of Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. After the streams of light vanished, the water surrounding the palace, as well as the water inundating the entire ground below, followed suit, rapidly pouring into Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. In just a few short seconds, an amount of water enough to form an ocean was all absorbed into the depths of Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate, completely disappearing from this world as if it had never existed. Having witnessed the entire process, Lin Zikan's face was full of disbelief, and he felt extremely shocked inside. That was the volume of an ocean's worth of water, which Shen Qinghan had managed to absorb in just a few short seconds. How was that possible? Could it be that there was another world connected inside Shen Qinghan's body, or that she possessed a small world of her own? Lin Zikan was utterly baffled by this. Although perplexed, he did not dwell on this at such a time. Instead, he quickly steadied his emotions, took Shen Qinghan, who was floating in the air, into his arms, and landed on a nearby skyscraping giant tree to observe her condition. Deep in the ancient ruins of the origin land, Qi Qingmo raised her slender right hand and caught a man of the mythical level from afar, her fingers tightly gripping his throat. Under the man's feet lay 3 withered corpses, nothing more than skin and bones. All 3 corpses were terrifying beings that had reached the great perfection of the 9th order during their lives, but now the blood qi power in their bodies had been completely drained, leaving nothing but worthless husks. Heretic cultivator, you heretic! The man whose throat was clutched by Qi Qingmo from a distance uttered in extreme pain. Having lived for so many years, this was the first time he had encountered a humanoid that increased its strength by devouring the flesh and blood of other living beings, he was filled with shock and fear. Qi Qingmo paid no attention to the man's words. With a thought, she quickly sucked out all the blood qi power from his body for her own use. As the blood qi power continuously drained, the burly man visibly shrank at a speed detectable by the naked eye. In just a few seconds, the man, who had been over 3 meters tall, shriveled into a hunched old man barely reaching 1.60 meters. Emaciated and on his last breath. "You heretic, you pose a great threat to other mythical level living beings. There will be no place for you in the origin land." In the last moments before his death, the man's eyes were fixed on Qi Qingmo as he left her with these threatening words. Qi Qingmo felt no inner turmoil upon hearing this, simply speeding up the absorption process. A few breaths later, she had the man, who was of mythical level, sucked dry to a traitorous husk, causing him to completely perish. Wu! Qi Qingmo let out a deep breath of turbid air, calmly sensing the qi blood strength within her body. Seeing her qi blood strength ascend to a higher level, a rare faint smile appeared on her face. The pure blood path has been thoroughly mastered, no longer will there be a need to rely on nature's spiritual energy, nor waste time researching origin force. In the southern domain of the origin land, within an unfathomably deep cave, a man with sinister eyes wearing a black Taoist robe hung upside down from the cave ceiling, meditating with closed eyes. Puh! Suddenly, the sound of liquid spraying echoed. The man violently spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his face turned deathly pale. His soul had suffered severe trauma, reaching down to his foundations, resulting in a slight drop in his strength. "That woman in the Taoist robe is becoming stronger." The man took a moment to recover, then said with a serious expression. He vividly remembered that when Qi Qingmo first appeared, her strength was only at the middle order of legends, merely more tricky and elusive, nothing special. Yet in just a few months, Qi Qingmo had grown strong enough to easily kill one of his mythical level avatars, which made him feel very threatened. Chapter 455, 261, Mythical Level Expert. Slay with one hand. _2. It looks like we have to notify a few old friends to make a move, and we must join hands to deal with that Taoist robe woman, otherwise, the trouble will be endless. The man muttered quietly. After speaking, he took out a deep purple pill and swallowed it. The moment he swallowed the pill, his pale complexion instantly turned rosy, showing no signs of the severe damage to his soul just moments ago. At that moment, a handsome young man flew in from outside, slowly hanging upside down next to the man and said urgently, "Father, why is Sujija from Green Hills Ancient Mountain still unwilling to form a marriage alliance with me? Haven't you been there once to propose the alliance on my behalf?" The young man, being the son of the Night King, held a position second only to one and above tens of thousands within the Thousand Rocks cave. Since his childhood, he always got whatever he desired and nobody dared cross him. But now, as the son of the Night King, he had been rejected by the Holy Maiden of Green Hills Ancient Mountain, which made him feel an extraordinary sense of humiliation and anger. The Night King, the man whose soul was heavily harmed just now, said indifferently to the young man, "Don't worry, in a few more days, Green Hills Ancient Mountain will be completely occupied. Then, you can have any fox demon you want, maybe even play with the Mountain Lord, and experience it for yourself." "Father! Is that true?" The young man's voice trembled with excitement. The fox demons of Green Hills Ancient Mountain were all devastatingly beautiful beings. Especially the Mountain Lord, exquisitely pure yet desirably seductive. If he could have the Mountain Lord serve as a warming maid, and indulge in her charm, then death in this lifetime would be worthwhile. To die under a peony flower, one is still a romantic spirit as a ghost. 40 li outside the number 1 city gate, that territory. A dangerous area. Upon a skyscraping giant tree, Lin Zikan held Shen Qinghan in his arms, spreading his spiritual power to check her body, carefully probing every part of her to see if there was any problem. Lin Zikin was worried about her body because of the amount of water that had suddenly surged into Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. After a very serious checkup, Lin Zikin found that Shen Qinghan's body was not in any serious trouble, and all the data were normal. The internal data was very normal. But there was an apparent change in some external parts of her body. For instance, her hair had become bluer in color and softer in texture. When touched, it felt like touching water, so pleasant to the touch that one could hardly bear to stop. Besides, there was a clear change in her skin. It had become more tender. So tender that it seemed a light pinch could squeeze water out of it, extraordinarily magical. They say a woman is made of water. That phrase is a compliment for other women, but for little dirty girl, Qinghan, it's a fact. Lin Zikin looked at Shen Qinghan in his arms and murmured quietly to himself. After saying this, he recalled everything he had seen just before the palace disappeared. The nameplate of the palace bore the 3 characters Palace of Water God. The palace was constantly filled with calls for God. Above the palace floated Shen Qinghan. Connecting all these scenes, Lin Zikin couldn't help but conjecture, a conjecture about Shen Qinghan's identity. He guessed that Shen Qinghan's identity was the water god. Or more accurately, he conjectured that there was a legacy of the water god within Shen Qinghan. This would well explain why Shen Qinghan's constitution was so special. Lin Zi. While Lin Zikin was immersed in his thoughts, Shen Qinghan, who lay in his arms, weakly opened her eyes and called out feebly. Seeing that she had woken up, Lin Zikin asked tenderly, "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "My head hurts a bit, and I don't have much strength in my body," Shen Qinghan replied weakly while rubbing her head. Lin Zikin continued to ask, "Is it very unbearable?" Shen Qinghan still sounded weak, "It's all right, not too unbearable, it's a bit like the feeling of motion sickness." Hearing this, Lin Zikin breathed a sigh of relief, "As long as it's nothing serious." Shen Qinghan sat up from Lin Zikin's embrace, looking puzzled as she asked, "Lin Zi, what exactly happened while I was unconscious? Weren't we trapped in a cage just now?" Lin Zikin patiently explained, "Here's what happened. The sudden appearance of fragrance. The betrayal of Luo Qingxiu. The betrayal of everyone else. The appearance of the Vine Woman. The emergence of the Palace of Water God. The collapse of the Palace of Water God. All the water being absorbed." Lin Zikin relayed, in the most concise language, everything that had happened while Shen Qinghan was unconscious. After listening, Shen Qinghan found it hard to believe. "You're saying that the colossal Palace of Water God collapsed into streaming lights, all pouring into my Heaven's Gate, followed by a flood of water, comparable to a vast ocean, also gushing into my Heaven's Gate?" "Yes," Lin Zikin nodded. After getting confirmation from Lin Zikin, Shen Qinghan's face was full of disbelief. She found it hard to imagine that the amount of water that could form a vast ocean could all be funneled into her Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate was so small, how did it manage to hold so much water? The more Shen Qinghan thought about it, the more puzzled she became. At that moment, she suddenly realized her sea of consciousness had expanded significantly, and she also noticed a huge palace floating inside. Engraved on the archway of the palace were the prominently displayed characters, Palace of Water God. Wasn't this the palace Lin Zi mentioned? Was all of this really true? Why could my sea of consciousness do this? Could it be that I truly am the water god? Thinking this, Shen Qinghan felt a mix of emotions in her heart. She was excited at the possibility of having such a powerful identity. Yet, she also felt somewhat ill at ease with this identity, not quite willing to accept that she had another identity besides being Shen Qinghan. She only wanted to be Shen Qinghan, the girl who grew up with Lin Zikin since childhood, the pretty lady who had just turned 20, and not the reincarnation of some ancient being. "I hope I'm just a lucky person who has received the legacy of an ancient being, not the reincarnation of one," Shen Qinghan quietly wished to herself. Finished thinking, she looked up at Lin Zikin and said softly, "Lin Zi, I've discovered that my sea of consciousness has grown a lot, and I saw that palace you mentioned inside it. The palace is in the filthy girl's sea of consciousness? Lin Zikin raised an eyebrow and asked, can your spiritual power enter the palace? Shen Qinghan replied, I don't know, I'll try. After saying this, she concentrated and spread her spiritual power, skillfully allowing it to extend towards the palace in her sea of consciousness, trying to explore the interior. However, as soon as the spiritual power touched the palace, it was instantly repelled, unable to enter. Before falling into a coma, she saw Luo Qingxiu make a move. Everyone suspected Luo Qingxiu, the only alien in the team, to be the traitor. They verbally attacked her. For safety's sake, they wanted to expel her from the team. But actually, the traitor was someone else. Luo Qingxiu felt very wronged, having stayed in the team for so long, always doing her best, yet never being trusted. Lin Zikin knew Luo Qingxiu wasn't the traitor, so he spoke up for her. Luo Qingxiu was ostracized. Lin Zikin offhandedly said something. Luo Qingxiu seemed to remember something. Remembering that she was Bai Xuet, after being ostracized initially. Remembering she is Bai Xuet. It didn't matter much. It was just a little incident in the second grade of elementary school. Lin Zikin didn't care. Luo Qingxiu didn't care much either. Only Shen Qinghan cared. Then Shen Qinghan went to interact with Luo Qingxiu. The Earthlings had to give up their stronghold in the origin land and all retreated back to Earth. Afterward, the exchange of source crystals for contribution points left Lin Zikin shocked. After the Great Battle, by regulation, the city allowed people to visit their relatives back on Earth at staggered times. Several months later, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan made a trip back to Earth. They learned that many had died. At the time when City 1 was attacked, other cities were also under attack. A lot of people died. Many people they knew had perished. The student council president Zhou Suihong died. Ma Zhenhe became a vegetable. Yuan Dongji was also seriously injured and recuperating at home. P.S. Begging, seek monthly pass and recommendation votes. Chapter 456, 262. Luo Qingxiu regains her memory. I am Bai Xuet. Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan sat on the tree and discussed for over half an hour, focusing on the palace of the water god within her sea of consciousness. They tried multiple times to enter the palace but ended in failure every time. Seeing that they couldn't figure anything out soon, they stopped paying attention to the palace of the water god and left the skyscraping giant tree beneath them, flying together towards the front lines of the battlefield. Now, the war at the front lines of the battlefield was drawing to a close. The people of the city had emerged entirely victorious, pursuing their advantage. The exotics plants of Sun Moon Sacred Land and the aliens of the Land of Oblivion left in retreat, beaten and in disarray. Lin Zi, we actually won, and it was a complete victory at that, somewhat hard to believe. Shen Qinghan looked down at the battlefield below, watching her own comrades vigorously chasing the enemies from Sun Moon Sacred Land and Land of Oblivion, feeling both surprised and thrilled. Lin Zikin also showed surprise, saying, this outcome, indeed, is somewhat unexpected. When they saw that the people of the city had won the war, both Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan were quite surprised, not expecting their side to be victorious. After all, the moment they had been locked in the cage made of blood-red roots, the front-line battle for the city's people was in a downturn, being suppressed by the exotic plants of the Sun Moon Sacred Land and the aliens of the Land of Oblivion. Compared to the current outcome, it was the complete opposite. Lin Zi, how do you think our side on Earth managed to win this war? Shen Qinghan, her peach blossom eyes growing more watery, asked Lin Zikin curiously. Lin Zikin could only shake his head to this question. I don't know either. When you fell unconscious, I wasn't in much of a better state. Completely wrapped up by the vines into an airtight cocoon, I had no clue about the events happening outside. Is that so? Shen Qinghan did not know that Lin Zikin had been previously bound into a cocoon by the vine woman. In her eyes, Lin Zikan had always been invincible, never having suffered a major loss in combat with enemies. Now, hearing that he himself was wrapped into a cocoon, to be honest, it caught her by surprise. The origin land is indeed too dangerous. In the future, absolutely, she must not let Lin Zi venture out of the city on a whim. Yes, safety first. Shen Qinghan thought to herself. However, in no time at all, the two flew to the air above the front lines of the battlefield. At this point, there were hardly any living beings still fighting on the most forward lines. There were only bodies and remains scattered everywhere. The reason for this scene wasn't because all the combatants had died. It was because a decisive outcome had emerged on the battlefield. The exotic plants of Sun Moon Sacred Land, as well as the aliens of the Land of Oblivion, had both become the losing side at the same moment, each choosing to retreat and move far from the front lines of the battlefield. And City No 1's warriors wanted to take advantage of the victory to mercilessly beat the retreating enemies, continuously chasing after the foes from both lands the entire way. Just like that, as one side fled and the other pursued, they gradually moved away from the front lines, leaving behind a vast number of dismembered corpses. And this was exactly what Lin Zikan needed. He quickly descended to the ground with Shen Qinghan, the former absorbing life origin while the latter was tasked with looting for war spoils. This process took about 10 minutes to complete. Lin Zikan, through devouring the life origin of the alien races, unlocked over 30 alien pictorials, acquiring the same number of biometric attributes, resulting in a further enhancement of his strength. Shen Qinghan managed to gather a storage artifact, over a dozen fist-sized source crystals, and several weapons that were still in decent condition, making it quite a rewarding haul. Lin Zi, Instructor Lan, and the others are over there, all lying on the ground unconscious. Shen Qinghan sensed the presence of Lan Tianbei and others on an empty field more than 10 miles away. Upon hearing this, Lin Zikan extended his spirit power in the direction Shen Qinghan indicated, instantly pinpointing the location of Lan Tianbei and the others. Luo Qingxiu, Zhao Qingxian, and Zhang Tao, along with other familiar faces, were all there. Beyond them, several human-shaped cocoons made from vines were present. It was Zhao Zixuan, Wu Xia, Fu Zhou, and others. From this, it was evident that Lan Tianbei and others had been unconscious since the time they were affected by the venom secreted by Lin Zikan. Otherwise, those who had been turned into cocoons by the vines would have already been rescued. It seems the lethal venom biometric attribute is quite potent. I wonder if it could have a certain effect on epic-level creatures. After observing the condition of Lan Tianbei and others, Lin Zikan murmured softly to himself. Then he stood up and left with Shen Qinghan to administer the antidote to Lan Tianbei and the rest. The poison was his doing, it was his responsibility to neutralize it. On the way to detoxify Lan Tianbei and the others, Lin Zikan extended his sensory perception to the fullest, scanning the surrounding terrain for dozens of miles for any sign of corpse remains, absorbing them on sight. Regrettably, there were hardly any corpses to be found on their way. It seemed the recent battle had not caused many casualties. This was likely because the high-end battle involving the city lord had been decided early on, leading to a rapid conclusion of the war and sparing many casualties. Lin Zikan analyzed in his mind. A few seconds later, Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan crossed a distance of over 10 miles to reach the area where Lan Tianbei and the others were. Including Lan Tianbei, there were more than 20 people lying on the ground, each completely unconscious and engulfed in endless slumber. The reason for their state was the overwhelming effect of the absolute venom, potent enough to instantly poison any being below the level of an epic creature, leaving them defenseless. Chapter 457, 262. Luo Qingxiu regains her memory. I am Bai Shuet, _2. Lin Zikan didn't waste any time, and quickly administered the antidote to the people lying unconscious on the ground. Once the poison was neutralized, everyone gradually opened their eyes and regained consciousness. The quickest to awaken were Lan Tianbei, Zhao Qingxian, and Zhang Tao, all of whom were rare level beings with much stronger physiques than the other members of the team. It took about half a minute. The unconscious people on the ground all gradually regained consciousness, their eyes somewhat dazed as they looked around. They were all unaware that they had been seduced by fragrance, causing them to unconsciously attack Lin Zikin. Their memories only lingered before being captivated by the fragrance. After an unknown amount of time, suddenly, someone looked at Luo Kyungsu, raised their weapon toward her, and loudly questioned with furrowed brows. "Who exactly are you, and why did you attack Lin Zikin?" The person questioning Luo Kyungsu was a youth with a biological level as high as high level 8th order. Before his mind was seduced by the fragrance, he had seen Luo Kyungsu elementalize into a cluster of ice mist, preventing Lin Zikin from breaking the cage. He was unaware that Luo Kyungsu had been captivated by the fragrance before that, presuming she was an undercover infiltrating the alien-human level genius team, delivering a deadly blow at the crucial moment. Upon hearing the youth's question, the others, belatedly realizing, recalled what they saw before being seduced, Luo Kyungsu preventing Lin Zikin from rescuing everyone. Instantly, the atmosphere at the scene became tense. Aside from Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan, everyone else firmly gripped their weapons, looking at Luo Kyungsu with hostility. However, Luo Kyungsu, being the first to be bewitched by the fragrance, had no idea what had happened during the time after her bewitchment. Thus, facing everyone's hostility, Luo Kyungsu only felt baffled. "I've always said it, they are of a different kind, with hearts that differ. We shouldn't have allowed this alien to join the alien-human level genius team, she shouldn't be living in the city." Zhao Zixuan stared at Luo Kyungsu with fierce eyes filled with hostility. In this alien-human level team, her prejudice towards aliens was the strongest. Because her parents had died at the hands of aliens, she had been implacable towards aliens since she was a child, wishing that all aliens from Origin Land would perish. "Kyungsu, when Chen was trying to break the cage to help us escape, why did you intervene to stop him?" Lan Tianbei, clutching a machete in his hand, asked Luo Kyungsu with a cold expression. Luo Kyungsu frowned slightly and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember intervening to stop Lin Zikin, there might be some misunderstanding here." "Misunderstanding? Ha!" Zhao Zixuan scoffed, with so many eyes watching, "You say you don't remember stopping Lin Zikin, do you think we are fools?" A youth friendly with her aggressively added, "Luo Kyungsu, stop pretending. An alien is an alien, you'll never feel a sense of belonging to Earth. Don't think playing dumb will get you out of this." Another youth said, "Let's not waste words with her, just restrain her and take her back to the city, let the discipline team interrogate her." With a few taking the lead. Others also began verbally attacking Luo Kyungsu. Their tone was extremely harsh and hostile, treating Luo Kyungsu, an alien, as an undercover agent lurking in the city, seemingly eager to interrogate her harshly right then and there. Hearing everyone's malicious words, Luo Kyungsu lowered her head and pressed her thin lips together, her hands clenched into fists, feeling utterly wronged. She had been living in City Number 1 since she was 8, and joined the alien-human level genius team the same year. You could say that she grew up as a local in City Number 1. Yet even so, whether it was the city's people or her teammates, they all distrusted her, believing they are a different kind with hearts that differ, and always harbored hostility towards her. And now, they had even branded her with a baseless accusation, causing her tremendous pain. She never wanted to be an alien, she just wanted to live quietly in City Number 1, occasionally visiting her master Yuan Dongji, enjoying the few warm moments. But why? Why couldn't even such a small request be fulfilled by everyone? Why must they discriminate against me? Why must they remain so hostile towards me? What exactly did I do wrong? Is it just because I am an alien that I must be condemned outright? The more Luo Kyungsu thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt, so much so that her usually expressionless face started to moisten around the eyes. She couldn't accept that despite her diligent work in the team, she still faced ostracism from so many people. Everyone, please calm down. Seeing the situation getting out of control, Lin Zikin spoke up. Hearing him say this, everyone involuntarily turned their heads towards him, waiting for him to continue. Luo Qingxiu did indeed intervene to stop me from breaking the cage, but that wasn't her intention, it was only because her mind was clouded by the fragrance, and she couldn't control herself. After speaking, Lin Zikin added, after Luo Qingxiu intervened to stop me, you all followed suit and attacked me, similarly having your minds clouded by the fragrance. If you think about it, you'll realize that your memory only stays before smelling that fragrance, everything after that is a complete blank. Hearing Lin Zikin say this, everyone went into deep thought, recalling what exactly had happened earlier. Upon reflection, they found that, indeed as Lin Zikin had said, their memories only lingered before they smelled the fragrance, and they remembered nothing beyond that. At this moment, everyone realized that they might have misunderstood Luo Qingxiu. However, despite the misunderstanding, they still harbored hostility and vigilance towards Luo Qingxiu due to their prejudice against her alien identity. Especially Zhao Zixuan, who said firmly, "Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, we should still expel Luo Qingxiu from the team, not letting her accompany us, to minimize the risk." This statement was full of prejudice while also making sense. They are of a different kind, with hearts that differ. Based on these 8 characters, everyone agreed to expel Luo Qingxiu from the team, not wanting to venture out of the city with this alien anymore, lest they really get stabbed in the back one day. Not afraid of 10,000, just afraid of the one. For such potentially happening events, everyone chose to prevent problems before they arise by proactively avoiding all risks to avoid the situation of capsizing in a drain. Don't be like this, everyone. I've known her since I was very young, and she's really a good person, she definitely wouldn't do something like betraying us. Shen Qinghan could not stand by any longer and mustered up the courage to stop everyone. Seeing that his fiancée had spoken up, Lin Zikin also followed, saying, "There is no need for everyone to doubt over things that haven't happened. Meaningless doubts only drive people to extremes. Let's just skip over this matter, stop talking about it, everyone." Lin Zikin agreed that it was normal for everyone to have suspicions, but he did not support voicing these suspicions as if they were facts. After hearing Lin Zikin's words, everyone wisely stopped saying more. Lin Zikin's evolutionary talent was something everyone had seen. Unless something unexpected happened, Lin Zikin was bound to become one of Earth's top combat forces in the future. No one wanted to offend such a promising individual. On the other hand, Luo Qingxiu, watching Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan speaking on her behalf, felt a sense of déjà vu, as if she had experienced a similar situation before. In response, she tried hard to search her memory, trying to recall past experiences. As she searched, she felt a sharp pain in her brain. "Xiao Chen, Bai Shui looks so pitiable, let's go help her, okay?" Guan Chun, wipe the water off Bai Shui's desk. "Those who bullied Bai Shui before, come and apologize to her now." Luo Qingxiu was ostracized. Lin Zikin just made an offhand remark. Luo Qingxiu seemed to remember something. She remembered being ostracized, realized she was Bai Shui. Remembered she was Bai Shui. It wasn't much of a big deal. It was just a minor episode back in the 2nd grade. Lin Zikin didn't care. Luo Qingxiu didn't care much either. Only Shen Qinghan cared. Later, Shen Qinghan went to get to know Luo Qingxiu better. On the actual battlefield, as Elder Tree's clone and Thorn Fairy along with other Origin Land living beings left, peace gradually returned. Earthlings could only give up their base in the Origin Land and head back to defend Earth. Later, converting source crystals into contribution points, Lin Zikin was taken aback. After the Great Battle, by regulation, people staggered their timings to return to Earth to visit their families. Several months later, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan made a trip back to Earth. They learned that many people had died when City No. 1 was attacked. Other cities were also under attack. Many people died. Familiar people, quite a few had died. The student council president Zhou Suihong died. Ma Zhenhe became a vegetative state. Yuan Dongji also was seriously injured, recuperating at home. P.S. Begging bowl out, please recommend and vote with monthly pass. Chapter 458, 263. Luo Kyungsu takes the initiative to visit. Luo Kyungsu remembered that she had once had an identity as Bai Shuet. Just as she was about to tell Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan about this. Buzz. 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 Piercing sounds of objects cutting through the air came from high above. Everyone looked up upon hearing that, and what they saw were Qin Chuan and his ragged group descending. The city lord had returned. This signified that their leading forces had won the battle on the other front. Lan Tianbei and the others were all surprised by this turn of events. In their understanding, Earth's side had always been at a disadvantage, and it would have been deemed successful just to keep the city from being breached during the Great War. Winning the war was something they didn't even dare to hope for. As soon as Qin Chuan and the others landed, they immediately walked towards Shen Qinghan. Seeing this, Shen Qinghan instinctively shrank behind Lin Zikan. Lin Zikan guessed what was happening, figuring that Qin Chuan and his party must have noticed the palace of water god that appeared in the sky earlier and saw it transform into a stream of light that plunged into Shen Qinghan's heaven's gate. Sure enough, as soon as Qin Chuan approached Shen Qinghan, he spoke with a hint of respect, "Classmate Shen, do you have time now to go back to the city to talk?" Shen Qinghan, as always, looked towards Lin Zikan without an opinion of her own. Seeing her look over, Lin Zikan spoke on her behalf, "She has time." After saying this, he then added, "Can I come along?" Of course, Qin Chuan gave an affirmative answer. After arranging for others to stay behind and clean up the battlefield. Quickly, Qin Chuan, with a thought, took Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan back to the city. The other leaders in the city also wanted to follow, but Qin Chuan outright rejected them, using the excuse that they should stay to clean up the battlefield. What does the city lord want with Shen Qinghan? If anyone should be sought, it should have been Lin Zikan. What exactly is going on? Lan Tianbei and the others exchanged glances, all feeling perplexed. Within the spacious city lord's office, Qin Chuan sat in front of the tea table and poured a cup of hot tea for both Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan across from him. After taking a slight sip of his tea, he looked at Shen Qinghan and asked, "Classmate Shen, about an hour ago, I saw you floating above a huge palace. What exactly is that all about? Would you mind telling me?" Shen Qinghan didn't rush to answer but subconsciously looked towards Lin Zikan beside her. Lin Zikan felt that since the matter had been witnessed firsthand, there was no need to hide it, so he spoke on behalf of Shen Qinghan. "As for what exactly is happening, both she and I don't understand it very well. But one thing is certain, her physique is very special. Since childhood, her affinity with water has far exceeded that of ordinary people, and her water-related abilities are also quite exceptional. I guess she must have received some kind of water-related inheritance. It's an innate inheritance. As for that palace, she and I don't quite understand the circumstances." Lin Zikan roughly told Qin Chuan everything he knew, wanting to see if the city lord who had seen much and knew wide, could provide them with answers. After listening, Qin Chuan rubbed his chin with one hand, sinking into contemplation. Water-related inheritance? Innate from birth? Could it be the water god's inheritance? Based on what Elder Tree's clone had said, the water god has been resurrected, and the 3 words Palace of Water God on the plagues of the palace. Qin Chuan speculated that Shen Qinghan might have obtained the inheritance of the water god. However, he didn't know what kind of existence the water god was, having never heard the words water god in Origin Land. After pondering for a moment, Qin Chuan, thinking it through, asked, "By the way, that palace of water god and the water surrounding it, where did they go afterwards?" How did they disappear into thin air? Upon hearing such a question, Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan became puzzled as well. The palace of the water god and the water that surrounded it had been a very spectacular and shocking scene as it poured into Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. Neither of them expected that Qin Chuan, a legendary level creature, hadn't seen this scene. Could everyone not see it? Or was it just Qin Chuan who couldn't? Thinking this, Lin Zikan hesitated, not knowing whether to reveal the palace of the water god inside Shen Qinghan's Heaven's Gate. After brief and careful deliberation, ultimately, Lin Zikan decided not to keep Shen Qinghan's secret, telling Qin Chuan, that palace of the water god and the water that enveloped it, they all poured into her Heaven's Gate. The water that poured in became part of her sea of consciousness, enlarging it by dozens to hundreds of times. As for the palace itself, it now quietly floats within her sea of consciousness. Such a vast palace, such a massive amount of water, all poured into her Heaven's Gate? How could that be possible? Creating a storage space within the sea of consciousness is something that only legendary or mythical level beings can do. She is merely a rare level creature, how could she do it? Was it the inheritance of the water god that enabled her to do these things? Qin Chuan found this unbelievable and became even more curious about this so-called water god. Thinking this over, he said to Shen Qinghan, "Next, I am going to extend my spiritual power to explore your sea of consciousness, to see what its current condition is. The process might bring a bit of discomfort." This was not a request, but a notification. At the moment his voice fell, Qin Chuan's spiritual power invaded Shen Qinghan's sea of consciousness. He did not care whether Shen Qinghan agreed. This was the arrogance of a legendary level expert. There was no need to consider what a rare level weaker being thought. Lin Zikan, detecting the spiritual power emanating from Qin Chuan, felt dissatisfied with his domineering actions. Chapter 459, 263. Luo Kyungsu takes the initiative to visit _2. But that was all he could do, feel dissatisfied. Although Lin Zikan was far stronger than his peers, with an evolutionary talent that dazzled the ages, at the end of the day, he was still just a rare level being. In front of someone like Qin Chuan, a legendary level expert, he might as well have been less significant than an ant. He had absolutely no strength to stop the others' domineering actions. Just as Lin Zikan was feeling dissatisfied and Shen Qinghan was a bit stupefied. Ah! A cry of pain suddenly burst from Qin Chuan's mouth. Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan were both startled by this unexpected outcry, both of them looking at Qin Chuan with puzzled expressions on their faces. Then, to their horror, they discovered that Qin Chuan, a legendary level expert, was now grimacing with blood flowing from all of his orifices and his veins bulging, looking as if he had suffered extremely serious physical injuries. "Lin Zi, what's happened to the city lord?" Shen Qinghan was panicking a bit. She had never seen anything like this before, and felt very uneasy, instinctively grabbing Lin Zikan's hand for some comfort. Lin Zikan also frowned deeply. His expression grave. How could Qin Chuan, a legendary level expert and one of the best among them, suddenly inexplicably suffer such severe physical injuries? The situation was eerily unsettling. On the other side, Qin Chuan conjured an elixir wrapped in wisps of purple aura and swallowed it immediately. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth, healing Qin Chuan's physical wounds at an unbelievable speed. In just the blink of an eye, Qin Chuan, who had just been bleeding from every orifice and was pale as a sheet, had completely recovered, with no sign that he had ever been injured. After taking a moment to recover, Qin Chuan, sensing the unease on the faces of Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan, started to explain. "The reason I was suddenly injured is because I was attacked by the sea of consciousness of Shen classmate. To be more precise, it was an attack from the palace of water god that resides within Shen classmate's sea of consciousness. It was an attack of extremely high spiritual strength, one that even I could not defend against. This suggests that the palace of water god in Shen classmate's sea of consciousness comes from a very significant source, and its owner is definitely a mythical level being. This mythical level being is likely none other than the first two words of the name of the palace water god. Qin Chuan bore the residual internal pain and analyzed these points logically. Upon hearing this, Lin Zikan was shocked. He hadn't expected the palace of water god inside Shen Qinghan's Sea of Consciousness to be so formidable, capable of easily inflicting heavy injuries on a legendary level expert. Shen Qinghan, upon hearing this, was somewhat dazed, and it took a moment before she reacted with excitement. If the palace of water god in her Sea of Consciousness was this powerful, it meant that she would definitely be very powerful in the future as well. After all, that palace was most likely her own heritage. The heritage from the water god. I'm feeling a bit unwell and need to rest alone. If there's nothing else, you two should leave, Qin Chuan said, feeling that his soul had taken a significant hit, and needed immediate rest and recovery to avoid any lingering effects that could potentially prevent him from evolving into a mythical level being. Although the likelihood was small, he didn't dare to gamble on it. Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan quickly left. After the two of them were gone, Qin Chuan immediately sealed off the entire office, taking out various heavenly materials and treasures that could nourish the soul from his Sea of Consciousness, consuming them non-stop, meticulously refining and absorbing them in his stomach. Who knows how long it took? Finally, Qin Chuan felt a little better. His mind cleared by a significant amount. Then, opening his eyes, he tried hard to recall the entire process of the spiritual attack he had just suffered. The more he thought about it, the more horrified he felt. That was really dangerous just now. It's a good thing I pulled back quickly, or the consequences would be unimaginable. If I'd been even a split second slower, the damage to my soul could have taken years to fully recover from. What kind of existence is this so-called water god, that merely a dwelling place could launch such a powerful spiritual attack? If the entity itself were to strike, would I have been obliterated instantly? No, once my soul has recovered. I must go to the province lord and inquire about it. Plus, Shen Qinghan, this young girl, must be given special attention, cultivated as a priority, and provided with the greatest allocation of resources. As Qin Chuan refined the heavenly materials and treasures in his stomach, he murmured these thoughts aloud, unconsciously. On the way back to the dorm, Shen Qinghan pursed her lips and said, "The city lord looked like he was seriously injured. I wonder if he's all right. It makes me feel rather bad." Lin Zikan disagreed. "What's there to feel bad about? It's not your fault, it was the city lord who, without your consent, insisted on probing your Sea of Consciousness, leading to this whole incident." This statement was filled with obvious dissatisfaction, a dissatisfaction with Qin Chuan's domineering manner. Shen Qinghan heard his dissatisfaction and felt it made sense, which eased the burden in her heart. Upon returning to the dorm, the first thing they did was to head to the bathroom to take a shower together. The dormitory's bathroom was relatively simple, only allowing them to stand and rinse off, unlike the school dorms that had bathtubs for soaking. They finished showering quickly and then stepped out of the bathroom together. Next, they moved to the bed in unison and efficiently deepened their emotional bond. After deepening their bond, the two cuddled together intimately, planning to catch some sleep and replenish their energy. But not long after falling asleep, there was a knocking from outside. Lin Zikan got up and spread his spiritual power to sense the surroundings, only to find that it was Luo Kyungsu with white hair standing outside. He couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. He couldn't figure out why Luo Kyungsu would come knocking on his dormitory door. Is she looking for me? Or is she looking for Han Han? And what is she looking for? Meanwhile, Shen Qinghan also sensed that Luo Kyungsu had arrived, and immediately, with her clear peach blossom eyes, said to Lin Zikan, "Lin Zi, sister is here, I'll go open the door for her." Lin Zikan, go ahead. Shen Qinghan put on her clothes and slippers, stepping lightly to open the door for Luo Kyungsu. Creak. The dormitory door opened. Then, what came into view was Luo Kyungsu, dressed in a form-fitting martial arts uniform. The martial arts uniform was loose-fitting and inconspicuous, but it was very eye-catching on Luo Kyungsu. This eye-catching effect all came from Luo Kyungsu's own beauty and sensuality. It had nothing to do with the loose martial arts uniform she was wearing. "That sister, is there something you need from us?" Shen Qinghan asked softly, looking at Luo Kyungsu standing outside. As she asked this question, she took the opportunity to closely observe Luo Kyungsu, realizing that her nominal senior sister was an exact adult version of Bai Shuet. "No need to call me sister, just call me by my name Luo Kyungsu," Luo Kyungsu said with a tranquil face. Although they both had Yuan Dongji as their master, making them sisters in a sense, they didn't interact much, and the relationship between them was not very close. In such a situation, if they called each other sisters, it would feel very awkward. "That Kyungsu, is there some urgent matter you need us for?" Shen Qinghan felt that someone as reclusive as Luo Kyungsu must have an urgent matter to deal with if she took the initiative to visit. At the same time, Lin Zikan, who sauntered over from the bed, also felt like Luo Kyungsu must have some pressing issue that brought her to their door. However, Luo Kyungsu did not have any urgent business. Under the gaze of both Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan, she said calmly, "I remembered everything about that short but lovely time in second grade, remembered that I once had the name Bai Shuet, remembered that I used to have a good relationship with both of you." Hearing this, Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan both quirked an eyebrow, wondering if they had heard wrong at first. This white-haired girl in front of them, she actually remembered their time from second grade? And afterward, she said she remembered being Bai Shuet. But that was just a mention, without any emotion. Remembered that she was Bai Shuet. And that was that. It was just a small episode from second grade. Lin Zikan didn't care. Luo Kyungsu didn't much care either. Only Shen Qinghan cared. Afterward, Shen Qinghan went to interact with Luo Kyungsu. The real battlefield. As elder trees incarnation and creatures like Thorn Fairy from the origin land departed, peace slowly returned. The Earthlings had no choice but to abandon their strongholds in the origin land and retreat to defend Earth. Later, exchanging source crystals for contribution points, Lin Zikan was shocked. Evolved to a rare 6th order. Shouldn't the water god appear in the eastern region? Why did she show up in the southern domain? The southern domain is clearly the wood god's domain. P.S. Setting up the bowl, seeking monthly pass votes and recommendations. Chapter 460, 264. Rare 8th Order. Epic level creature. Luo Kyungsu suddenly showed up and announced she had remembered everything, revealing her identity as Bai Shuet, which completely caught Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan off guard. The situation was so sudden that it took both of them by surprise. "So you remembered everything?" Shen Qinghan, coming back to her senses, asked Luo Kyungsu. Luo Kyungsu, with a cold voice, replied, "Yes." Then, the atmosphere turned somewhat awkward. The three of them standing at the door didn't know what to say next. After all, second grade in elementary school was 12 years ago. With so much time having passed, any so-called friendship had already faded. Not to mention, it was just a childhood friendship. Childhood friendships are the least lasting, the kind that can be forgotten in a few days, incredibly fickle. "Would you like to come in and sit down?" Shen Qinghan, uncharacteristically, invited. "I kind of miss those second grade days, why don't we sit down with some tea and chat about those fun times?" Faced with Shen Qinghan's invitation, Luo Kyungsu declined without a second thought. "No, I just came to tell you both that I've remembered everything. That's all." After speaking, Luo Kyungsu turned around and left, showing no interest in reminiscing, her demeanor especially cold. Shen Qinghan didn't expect her to just leave, and was momentarily stunned. After a moment, coming to her senses, Shen Qinghan opened her mouth to call Luo Kyungsu back to chat. But before she could make a sound, Lin Zikan said, Don't call out, let her go. It was just a trivial moment during our second grade, nothing worth reminiscing about. Shen Qinghan didn't say anything, just quietly watched Luo Kyungsu's departing figure, feeling somewhat bitter. She had started to realize the time from second grade. Only she cared about. Neither Lin Zikin nor Luo Kyungsu cared. It turned out that, from the beginning to the end, she was the only one who took their childhood friendship seriously. She headed back to the dorm. She closed the dorm door. Sitting cross-legged on the bed with a touch of melancholy, Shen Qinghan asked, Lin Zi, what do you think about our friendship with Bai Shui back in second grade? Lin Zikin honestly said, it was just a little episode of childhood, nothing special. Is that so? Shen Qinghan felt even more disheartened. Seeing her mood low, Lin Zikin started massaging her tender feet while soothingly saying, it's down to personality. You are more sentimental and cherish every emotional connection, while someone like me and Luo Kyungsu, who are emotionally colder, don't care much and find it insignificant. But I don't think you are emotionally cold, you have always been very nice to me, doting on me since we were kids. Shen Qinghan said, pursing her lips. Lin Zikin, it's different. We've grown up together, every single day since we were capable of remembering. The affection built over all these years can't be compared to an inconsequential elementary school friendship. That makes sense. Shen Qinghan smiled, but it seemed forced, her heart still filled with sadness. Seeing this, Lin Zikin didn't try to console her further. It was a matter of temperament, and consoling wouldn't help. Time passed in the blink of an eye. A few days later, the battlefield outside the city was completely cleared, and life within the city had returned to normal. Inside the city's exchange hall, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan, bearing the source crystals scavenged from the great battle, joined a less crowded line at a service window to exchange their source crystals for contribution points. Then, they would use the contribution points to exchange for needed evolution resources. About 15 minutes passed. Lin Zikin exchanged all the brought source crystals for contribution points, amounting to over 20,000. His transaction stunned everyone in the hall. In many people's eyes, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan were still a pair of newcomers who hadn't been in the origin land for long. But this newcomer pair managed to secure such a significant haul in their first major battle, which seemed almost defiance of the natural order. Facing the astonished looks and continuous murmurs of those around him, Lin Zikin felt no inner stir, and simply moved to another side to use the newly acquired contribution points to exchange for evolution resources. More than 20,000 contribution points seemed a lot. But it was still far from enough to exchange for even the cheapest epic-level evolution resource, which started at 100,000 points. As evolution progressed to later stages, the resources required exponentially increased. Ah, it's tough. Lin Zikin sighed internally. Then, he exchanged all 20,000 points for rare-level evolution resources, specifically the exotic fruits that could boost chi blood and spirit. Back at the dorm, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan each took half of the acquired rare-level exotic fruits and consumed every single one. After devouring more than a dozen rare-level exotic fruits, a textual notification slowly emerged from the void. Your biological level has successfully evolved from rare 3rd order to rare 6th order. Another 3 levels evolved. That's astounding. Looking at the notification in the void, Lin Zikin felt slightly excited. Compared to him, Shen Qinghan not only felt exhilarated, but she was completely thrilled. Lin Zi, I evolved to rare 5th order, how about you? Shen Qinghan asked Lin Zikin excitedly. Lin Zikin answered, rare 6th order. Shen Qinghan beamed happily, I knew it was rare 6th order, I evolved 3 levels, and I was sure you did too. With several past experiences as reference, she had figured out the pattern of their evolution compared to each other. Under the same evolution resources, the scope of their enhancement was almost identical.